thought I'd show you this nice little technique, just using a piece of natural sponge and a spray bottle. And I was just about to start a painting. I thought I'd hit record on the camera. So I don't think I've covered this before, well, certainly not on Patreon anyway. I think I have on YouTube. But I thought I'd give it a go anyway. It's just going to paint like a very simple sort of river scene. It's very nice using the sponge, especially for the trees and the reflections. It's kind of in a matter of seconds you can paint the tree and the reflections kind of all in one go. And because of the shape of the sponge, it kind of adds like a million leaves and branches and everything kind of all in one go. It's especially good for painting kind of summertime trees, and you get an instant kind of misty effect with the sponge as well. So just dip it in some clean water just to loosen it up a bit, because they can be quite hard. And I'll paint the distance first, so I've just mixed up a little bit of simple blue, blue-grey really, some ultramarine, cobalt. And so very simply just putting an outline of a tree and just bring the reflection down at the same time. So I'll add a little bit of raw sienna in there as well, and a bit of ultramarine. So still kind of on the blue side. And just bring some more tree shapes up. It's quite important, I think, to have the paper damp but not too wet when doing this technique. If you have it too wet, then the paint will just wash away really. If you have it too dry, then I always find the marks can be a little bit too hard edged. So if you just spray it with a mist bottle, just allows the paint just to soften. And so starting cooler and fainter off in the distance, and then it's getting ever so slightly warmer and darker as we come into the foreground, but the whole time putting in the shape of the trees and the reflections all at the same time. And so just move over to the right hand side, but I'm kind of moving all over the page really, and so just mixing all the colours together. So still kind of on the cooler side of things. So I grab some more ultramarine, a little bit more raw sienna, and some cadmium yellow into it as well, so getting a little bit greener. You can see there the marks that the sponge makes. I don't think you'd ever really be able to achieve that with a brush. You can get kind of close to it actually with cling film. That's another nice technique for this kind of thing. So I picked up even more blue paint as well. And it's starting to take shape. I haven't got a reference photo for this. It is a scene I've painted several times. So I'm looking for a little bit of light coming through about a third of the way in from the left. So more blue, raw sienna and cadmium yellow again. And getting a little bit thicker with the paint as well. And just trying to find some sort of tree shapes in there. Leaving some gaps in there as well, just to act as some little sky holes. Can't remember who it was that said you always should leave some sky holes in trees, give somewhere for the birds to fly through. So getting a slightly lighter touch as I go towards the top of the tree. I'm going to grab some burnt sienna now and try and get a little bit of actual colour in there. So getting quite warm now as we're coming towards the foreground, and that should act with the illusion of, or act to help with the illusion of depth. And I'll put some of that in over on the left hand side as well. And I think already it's starting to look like a river scene. So I'll grab some more ultramarine and burnt sienna now. So getting darker with the paint, keeping it on the browner side. And just building up layers of paint essentially. Now these sponges hold a huge amount of water and a huge amount of paint, but I don't wash it as I go. I like the way the paint kind of mixes together in the sponge as well. And it kind of keeps everything uniform. And I think if you keep washing the sponge out, the sponge will probably get a bit too wet, and get a nice sort of blending of the colours. So mix up even more burnt sienna and ultramarine. And as we're coming in towards like the largest foreground tree, some ever so slightly harder edges on that as well. And so the trees that are in the distance kind of look like they've got a bit of a misty haze around them. And now even more blue and burnt sienna. So it's fairly dark paint now. And just get some darker areas just at the base of the trees there. And I think I'll switch to a brush now. Just going to use a calligraphy brush. And just grab some of that grey. And just put in a suggestion, just a few tree trunks and branches. Just very lightly there with the brush. Just kind of teasing the branches out. And then just mirror that down in the water. I think it's quite amazing how much texture you can get in such a short amount of time using a sponge. And like I said at the start, I'm using a natural sponge. I think you probably could use a bathroom or kitchen sponge, but where they're synthetic and they don't hold as much water, so they won't hold as much paint. I've never actually tried with that type of sponge. But I mean, by all means, experiment. Let me know how you get on if you do use that. So I'm just continuing just to pick out a few tree trunks and a few sort of branches, just here and there, just to add a little bit of form. And everything I do, I'm just going to mirror it down in the water area. Now I don't really want to do too many of these. It's just enough, just so it reads as trees and like a whole bank of trees. I think in a way, I mean, probably don't really need to put in any work with the brush at all. It still does read as trees, but I quite like to have just a few areas of detail. Okay, I think I'll dry that off. Right, it's fully dry, so I'm just going to go back in with the sponge again, and I'll add some darker areas just at the bottom of the trees, just where it meets the water. So I'll give it a quick mist again. And with some ultramarine, burnt sienna, and just mix that up to about as dark as I can get it. And then back in with the sponge. Okay, so I'm just adding some shadowy areas really, and I'll mist it as I go if the paper's a bit too dry, because I still want it to be soft. And so I'll just repeat that on the right hand side. And now I'm using the sponge all the time, looking at where I need to go and just trying to find a pleasing shape. So I mix up some more dark paint. And again, add the shadows at the base of the trees. And then just bring it straight down for the reflection at the same time. And again, give it a mist, just so it all softens off. I'll go back in again with the calligraphy brush. So same mixture for the dark paint, just the blue and the burnt sienna. And I'll just add again a few little suggestions of detail, just here and there. So just putting in a few little tree trunk shapes, a few little branches, maybe there's some grasses going on there as well. And so just flicking the brush about. Whole time keeping everything loose. And same as before with the sponge, so just use the brush just to tease down a few reflections. And it's looking okay, but I think I'll just try and get like a bit of a water line in there. So actually get a good bit of separation in between the bank and the water. So just use a slightly larger brush now. And just get a few sort of darker marks, slightly harder edges. Now I've used vertical strokes up until now, but just putting a few little horizontals just at the water line. And then that creates a separation that I'm looking for. So I'll just go back in with a calligraphy brush again and just put a few thinner lines in. And the whole time again, just looking at it, looking how it's taking shape, seeing where I need to make a mark, and just making a decision very quickly really, and just putting it straight down. I think I'm getting towards the end, but I'll just a few little finishing touches just to tidy it up a bit, and just as well making sure that the water looks level. It's nothing worse than a painting with water in it and it looks like it's running out the side of the page. Okay, I'm just looking at it now, and I think I'll leave it at that. I think that's the painting finished. Okay, usual ceremony of taking the tape off around the outside, just to have a look at the finished painting. And it's a very simple technique, but you can get a very nice effect just using a piece of natural sponge. And starting out with your coolest, lightest tones in the distance, and then as you come closer, just gradually increasing the warmth and the darkness of the paint, just to get that illusion of depth really. So I'll just zoom the camera in just so you can get a closer look at the amount of texture you can achieve with the sponge. And like I said, you can paint a tree just in a matter of seconds really, and it's amazing how it just sort of paints the foliage instantly for you. And so do give it a go. Let me know how you get on. Let me know if you've got any questions. It's always good to hear from everybody. So I'll be back again next week with another video. So until then, give the video a like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.